Hey, what's up, buddy? Welcome back to the channel, and here lately, there's been a lot of alarm bells for the game industry, and I think especially on the side of consoles. I mean, whether that be Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, or even Valve in this case, they're all facing an uphill battle right now, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that, and I kind of want to go over some of those in today's video, and maybe the solution that they need going forward. Now, if you're new to the channel, though, do make sure to hit that subscribe button below, but yeah, let's just go get right into this, and I'm going to talk about each and every console on their own, starting with the Steam machine, because I feel like Valve right now is in the most unique situation of the four. I mean, for years, fans have wanted a first-party Steam console, and now that they've finally done it, it actually looks really good on paper. I mean, there's, yes, some concerns about its VRAM, but the big problem for Valve is that they couldn't have planned a release date any worse than they did. I mean, if you've been following along, then you probably know that prices for tech-related parts are skyrocketing because of the AI boom and all of these data centers taking up a large portion of the contracts. So now suddenly, things like RAM are scarce, and that's causing price to double or even triple in some cases. And the issue with that is that this isn't just some short-term problem. Some experts are projecting this issue to last into 2027 and maybe even into 2028. So it kind of feels like it's pretty much inevitable that console prices will increase throughout 2026. Now, we'll talk more about that later on with some of these other console makers, but unfortunately for Valve, they're likely going to have to launch the Steam machine at a higher price than they ever intended to, and that's a terrible way to launch a console. You know, they spent years and years trying to design a console for a specific price tag. That's the entire core for their strategy. I mean, I'll use the Switch 2 as an example. Nintendo's another company that's very budget-friendly, and thankfully Nintendo had a chance to release the Switch 2 just ahead of this entire mess, and the result of that has been the fastest-selling console of all time. But what would have happened if they launched at, let's say, $600? Do you think that the Switch 2 would still be the fastest selling console? Because I'm not so sure that it would have been. So that's where Valve finds themselves in. They're not going to have the same luxury to launch at a price that they originally intended to, and that could majorly impact its reach. So like I said, I mean, Valve just could not have picked a worse time to launch a console. But speaking of the Switch 2, Nintendo is the one growing console maker. I mean, when you look at the console market as a whole, it is stagnant. I mean, just look at the PlayStation 5. It's a console that on paper has sold, yes, incredibly well. It's near 85 million units as of this recording. And that's why a lot of people just kind of assume that PlayStation is in a great spot. But that's not necessarily entirely true, which is why Sony has grown frustrated throughout this generation. Now, to be clear, PlayStation is still doing fine, but the issue for them is that the PlayStation 5 is lagging behind the PlayStation 4 within the same time frame. And that's a problem because they planned this generation with the idea that it would be selling better than the PlayStation 4. That's why they've greenlit games that cost $300+ million to make. But those games aren't actually selling more, and in some cases, they're selling even less. As far as we know, Spider-Man 2 has sold less than Spider-Man 1, despite the first game being significantly cheaper to make. And the same thing applies for games like Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West. Now, I'm sure those games were still very successful on a PlayStation 5. Again, I think PlayStation is in a solid spot. But compared to what they achieved last generation, there's no doubt that PlayStation has stagnated a bit, which is a concern for them when game budgets are increasing the way that they are. In fact, I think this is the main reason that PlayStation is looking elsewhere to make more money. You know, 10 years ago, I would have never imagined PlayStation games would be on PC, and in some cases even on Xbox and on Nintendo consoles. But here we are, and they're porting a lot of their games over to PC, and then there's games like Helldivers 2 on Xbox, or Patapon and Everybody's Golf on Nintendo. So Sony is branching out. They're more open to the idea of multi-platform, and a lot of that, I think, is because the PlayStation 5 has stagnated a bit. They need to grow their software with these increasing budgets, and by being more multi-platform, that gives them that capability. Now, the question, I think, with that is just how much are they willing to expand? And I think over the next 10 years, we're going to see Sony open up more and more. Now, I don't know if they're ever going to be as multi-platform as, let's say, Xbox has become, but it wouldn't necessarily shock me if Sony were to come out and launch their own PC launcher as one such example. I could see them doing that, and I think they could have a lot of success with that if they were to ever do it. Of course, though, I mean, just like Valve, the PlayStation 5 will likely be impacted by price in 2026. I don't think that we've seen the last of these console price hikes. And that takes me over to Nintendo. Again, they are the one console maker that's actually been increasing generation over generation. The Switch 1 is right now the third best-selling console of all time, only behind the DS and the PlayStation 2. And the Switch 2 is already the fastest-selling console of all time by a pretty large margin at that. And you would think because of that, they'd be in a really great spot. But if you've been paying attention, investors aren't necessarily buying into the early hype despite its success. Instead, they're concerned because of the looming price hike that almost feels inevitable by this point. Now, Nintendo was actually recently asked about a price hike, and they more or less said that they're proceeding with caution. But again, it almost feels like it's inevitable. Now, to be completely fair, there are ways for these console makers to spread out the price hike. You know, instead of just increasing the price of their consoles, they could always increase the price of their games, their subscriptions and accessories to kind of spread things out a bit and make it feel like their consoles are a bit cheaper than they are. But, I mean, by this point, it definitely feels like there will be some price adjustments in the nearest future, and this could majorly impact the Switch 2 considering it's still very early in the generation. I mean, if it goes up to, let's say, $550 or even $600, that could slow their momentum down quite significantly. Again, just like Valve, Nintendo is a very budget-friendly company, and if they're not budget-friendly, that could impact their business. And then there's, of course, Xbox. You know, obviously, they've been preparing for a future that isn't as reliant on their consoles, which I'd say right now probably isn't the worst thing in the world for them, because the Xbox Series X is $600+ and it's barely selling. Now, we can point to the lack of exclusivity for one of those reasons, but price is definitely another leading reason for that. So with Xbox's new multi-platform strategy, you know, they're now able to bring in more money with the addition of these other consoles. And like I said earlier, PlayStation is going into a similar direction, albeit less aggressive. And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about in this video because the console industry has, yes, become stagnant. However, if you look at PC gaming, it's been growing over the past 5 years, and we've really seen that all generation long. So I think between Xbox and PlayStation, there will be an increased reliance on PC going forward, which is obviously the case for, you know, Xbox. Their next console is rumored to be a console PC hybrid for that matter, which I think actually sounds very interesting on paper. Got to see the execution, but I do like the idea. However, with that in mind, the one thing that I keep circling back to is the next generation for Xbox and PlayStation. Right now, we're seeing Valve struggle to come up with a price for the Steam machine. According to them, it's going to be out here within just the next few months, but we don't even have a price because they themselves don't know the price. I mean, again, they are in a terrible situation. And then if you look at the Switch 2, a brand new console, and its momentum could slow down significantly this year if it's forced into a price hike. So where does that leave Xbox and PlayStation? Because according to everything that we know, they both want to release their next generation console here within the next couple of years. But with everything that's going on, I just can't imagine a console launching in that type of environment. I mean, if the PlayStation 6 comes out and is forced to be $800 or even $1,000, what kind of market is it actually going to have? I mean, one of the big perks for consoles is not only their ease of use, but also their affordability. But this will kind of ruin that. I mean, by that point, gamers might just look to PC instead, which is already growing, and you also don't have to pay for a subscription to play online games. It just kind of feels like that's the direction that gaming is heading into if these console makers can't figure something out. So honestly, I think the answer for PlayStation is to delay their next console. I mean, that's not a perfect solution for them, but if I'm being honest, I don't think that we need a new console just yet anyways. Personally, I feel like the PlayStation 5 could have a 10-year life cycle, And that would be perfectly fine because its graphics and performance already more than meets the standard. I mean, we needed the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X for 60 FPS and faster load times, but now we're really more into the territory of diminishing returns. So I feel like they could delay the next PlayStation, and gamers would be more than okay with that. I really haven't seen a lot of gamers ask for these next-generation consoles, or at least yet. And as an added bonus, it would also give their developers more time to prepare for next generation, which, as we've kind of seen with these lengthy development times, they could probably use it. And, maybe that could give the PlayStation 6 a better start with a better price and also a better lineup of games. Now, Xbox, I feel like they might be a little bit more pressured to launch their next console sooner just because the Xbox Series X sells barely anything right now. And I also feel like Xbox is going to try to launch an ultra premium console like we've never seen before. So I don't think that they're as concerned about price. I feel like they're just more so trying to satisfy their hardcore fans, but with the idea that it will be niche. I don't think that they're necessarily looking to sell 50 million consoles. I think they'll be more than happy to sell, 10, 15, or even 20 million consoles. Again, they don't have that same reliance on their console business anymore, so I think they're going to release a luxury option and something that's going to be far more powerful than anything else in the market. So I could see them launching a little bit sooner just because of that. What do you think, though? Do you think consoles are in trouble with everything that's going on? And do you think that Xbox and PlayStation should delay their next generation until things settle down? For me, my vote is for a delay, but let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Anyways, though, that's going to be this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.